Hello, everybody. This is Laura Alamiri, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Beth Azor, and she's actually in commercial real estate. She has been in the business a little longer than I have, 34 years. I've been in 32. And she currently owns 6 shopping centers valued over $80 million, and also is an author of several books. And she hosts real estate retreats, symposiums about commercial real estate. So I'm very glad to have you on the call today, because this is a topic that I get a lot of interest as far as commercial. We're more dedicated to residential, but also to have a woman that is into this part of the business, especially commercial is even more male dominated than residential real estate, correct?
So, yes, Laura.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about you, how you got started in real estate, and what your background is, and we can go from there.
Sure. So my parents were in real estate, Laura. So when I turned 18, they encouraged me to get my real estate license. They were in residential in a small town near St. Augustine. So every summer during my college breaks, I would go help them sit open houses and help them with their real estate business. And I used to get commission, like parts of commission checks when I was back at school in Tallahassee, Florida. So it was a great side job. I would be a hostess in restaurants at night, but during the day I would work with them sitting open houses and running around for my mom's property management business. So I did get my start in residential. And then when I graduated FSU, I got my degree in English literature and communications. So I worked for a not-for-profit down here in Miami, the American Heart Association. And I was a special events coordinator, which I loved the job, but back in 1983, the starting salary was $11,000. So I immediately, upon getting that job, got a job sitting open houses for a developer down here in South Florida and worked Saturdays and Sundays as a hostess in his model homes using my license for that. And I did that for 2 years. And I got promoted at the Heart Association and went from 11,000 to 23,000, which is doubling my salary. But my income on commissions on the weekend job had exceeded that. So I said, I'm tired of working 7 days a week. Let me transition full-time into residential real estate. And so I quit the Heart Association and started working for the developer of the luxury home development. And I went from working 7 days a week to 5 days a week, but I was sitting in a trailer reading People magazines, waiting for people to walk in so I could get my up. And I was so bored. And I said, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Like, I really love the job at the Heart Association, but now what do I do? And a friend of mine said, you should get into commercial real estate. And I said, oh, that's gross. Isn't that selling land? That's more boring than this. And they said, no, there's this thing called leasing. And developers build shopping centers and they want to lease space to bagel restaurants and insurance companies and dry cleaners. And if you can be the leasing agent to help those entrepreneurs lease space, you will become part of their family. You'll get invited to every wedding, baptism, bar mitzvah, because you will have helped them achieve their American dream. And I said, oh my gosh, sold. How do I find a job doing that? And she gave me a recommendation of a company in Miami, and I went and got a job there, and I was there 18 years and grew. When I joined the company, we had 11 people, and when I left, I had been the president for 6 years. And we had 150 people when I left to go start my own company.
Great. So, and then you kind of touched on it, but why commercial real estate specifically then? Is that more something that you saw the potential, or because maybe it wasn't as much competition? Like you said, you started in residential really, but then you migrated into commercial from a suggestion? But
yeah, I really liked dealing with the entrepreneurs. And whether today, I meet with a dentist, and then tomorrow I meet with a tutoring facility, and next week I meet with a tennis shoe store, And, the week after that, it's an urgent care. And, we just signed a lease 2 weeks ago with La Granja, the chicken restaurant. So we get to, I really liked the idea of just meeting with a bunch of different entrepreneurs because of the variety, and it was always changing and it was exciting and I like learning. So I think that's why I gravitated to leasing space, which then helped me start buying shopping centers.
Okay, great. And so where are you now? I know you said that you presently own yourself,
Right.
some shopping centers. So where are you as far as your current investments and also your business? What are you working on at the moment?
Sure. So I live in Southwest Broward and in Davie, Florida, which is a suburb of Fort Lauderdale. And I own 6 shopping centers, all within 10 minutes of my house, which is great. And we have about over 100 different tenants in those 6 shopping centers. And so 75 to 80% of my time, Laura, is running those shopping centers. So I have a team, I have a property manager, I have a part-time bookkeeper, and I have a leasing agent. And then I have my director of operations who's been with me since I started the company in 2004. So our small team collects rents. I'm constantly looking at deals to buy. So I underwrite them in-house. We run the physical plant management, making sure the grass is cut, that our vendors show up, that, we handle all of our tenants' complaints, et cetera. So our job is to run those 6 shopping centers. I'm always looking, putting offers in on new shopping centers. And then 20% of my time, I travel the country teaching leasing agents with big companies and small companies how to fill their shopping center vacancies. So and that's what the 2 books I wrote were, teaching leasing agents, how do you find tenants to fill your shopping centers? So I'm a consultant slash sales trainer and help do that.
Right, and one of the things that I noticed from what you're saying, and it's one of the things I always strive for, is you have to be very focused on a niche. Your niche is shopping centers, correct? And working specifically with leasing the shopping centers. And that's why I'm saying real estate, you don't have to go in 10 different directions. You don't have to do, residentials and then do commercial buildings and mobile home parks. And just focus on something and get the best you can at that and develop from there. So that's what you've been doing, correct? You just really focused on a strategy for many years.
Yes. I've been doing retail, leasing, and ownership, for 34 years. And they say riches are in the niches, right? Riches are in the niches. So I do think that when you're focused, whether it's multifamily, auctions, warehousing, flips, whatever it is that you focus on, the more you can focus on that. Just like me, all my centers are within 10 minutes of my house. So if a property becomes available in my market, I know if it's a good deal right away because I'm very entrenched in my market, versus if I own 6 centers, all over the state of Florida or all over the Southeast, I wouldn't have the market knowledge necessary to be able to move quickly to know if it's a good deal or not. So I focus not only on shopping centers, but I focus on shopping centers in Southwest Broward County.
Great. Yeah, I think that's very important. And I always strive and tell everybody, be focused. For many years, I was working in only 4 zip codes. I was doing fix and flips, wholesaling. I owned rental properties. And then I moved down here in Florida 4 years ago. But for 4 years, for almost over 20 years, I was only in 4 zip codes within a metropolitan area, which was St. Louis. And I didn't have to do anything else. That was more than enough to keep me busy. So
are you a Rams fan?
No, my daughter's more into sports. She's a St. Louis Cardinals, and she's here. Actually, she's my assistant too, and she works together. She's a wholesaler. She does residential. Okay, great. So now. The story is very impressive, right? You've been in the business for so long, and as a woman breaking into this business that is so heavily male dominated, even more than residential. I have a couple of questions for you, and this is something that I love to really understand when I meet a woman that's been successful in the business. I have a couple of questions. And that goes back to, what did you learn? What is your biggest mistake? Or what is something that you say, okay, now I know, and I'm not going to do this again, right? So what did you learn through years in the business? What's something you would have done differently?
Thank you. That's a great question, Laura. I will tell you that my biggest mistake and the biggest lesson I've learned is that I should have followed my instinct. So there were many times where I had a hunch on a deal to buy, and I would go to the man in my office or the male mentor that was helping me, and I would say, I saw this deal, what do you think? And the man or the male lender, right? Because you're right, the majority of my business are men. There aren't a lot of women I can go to ask their opinion. And so I would go to men. And if the men kind of, shot me down or said, oh, that's too risky, or I don't think you should do that, I can count literally 8 deals that someone else went and did after I had the idea, but I let someone, usually a male, talk me out of it. And I thought that they were smarter than me, or I just, they had more experience than me. And what I found out was my instinct was right, but I was afraid, and I didn't go with my instinct. And every time, literally, there were 8 situations where I let someone talk me out of it, and then someone else went and did the deal and made a lot of money. And I realize now that I don't let my instinct get in the way. I listen to my instinct. I don't let someone talk me out of it. And at least if I push it, and if the deal doesn't go through, it's not because I didn't try and put 100% of my effort into it. It's not because someone talked me out of it. It's because I couldn't make it happen, but I go, full bore.
Right. And this is so important, because one of the things I say about myself when I started in real estate, that I was fortunate to work in a real estate company in Hawaii where there were 75 agents and 74 were women, because the owner of the company believed that women were better in the business because we have those hunches, the sixth sense in understanding things, that gut feeling. And as a young agent, I learned that from the beginning. Go with what you feel, even if it's against the current. And so that's very powerful. You said that. And I always say to the ladies that, follow me or talk to me, just go with your gut feeling. At the end of the day, the numbers and everything else might look great, but if that deal doesn't look right for you, don't do it. But if it does feel this right, do it. This is something that women, we have that I think is, an edge over what the male counterparts do. That's great. Now, what is something you've been really proud of, is through your career?
So I bought an office building 3 years ago, and it was on a great intersection in Plantation, Florida, which is about 15 minutes from here. And I got a bunch of partners, and we bought it. And I said, my idea is to convince Starbucks for me to build a Starbucks in the parking lot. But I have to convince Starbucks to go off the corner, because they tend to like to go right on the main corner. I have to convince them to go a little bit down the street, and I have to convince the city to let me sign a lease with Starbucks and start doing the plans and getting the permit while I had the tenants in the office building, promising the city that I would deplete the occupancy of the office building. So by the time we started construction and Starbucks opens for business, that the office building would be empty and I could demolish it. And so I had, again, many male attorneys and male partners and people in the industry going, you're never going to get Starbucks to agree to go off the corner, and you're never going to get the city to allow you to do this. Like, there's no way. And I was able to sign a lease with Starbucks. I got the city to agree. We knocked down the building 2 weeks ago, and Starbucks is opening next Monday. So I'm very proud, because everybody that I know said, you're crazy, that you're never going to be able to pull this off. And we were able to do it.
Great. Yes, I know that. I love when they challenge you, right? You want to prove them wrong. Definitely. So through your career, thinking back, I know I do this from time to time with myself. I want to think back and see what you think has made you successful. What made you thrive and survive through recessions, through the economy changes, through, the way the people perceptions are, and also the industry. In a nutshell, what do you attribute your success to?
I think 100% is work ethic, because it's the only thing you can control, right? You can't
Right.
control a bad boss that doesn't want to see you rise. You can't control the economy. You can't control buyers, sellers, and tenants. But what you can do is you can put in an extra 2 or 3 hours a week, which will, if you do it for 5 days, that's 15 hours. If you do it, if you work another 15 to 20 hours, that's 50% more than your competition. And how do you not be successful when you're putting in 50% more than the next guy? And that's all in your control. And, you can work smart, but if you can put in even an extra hour a day, like I get up at 5:30 and I plan my day. And I have 2 sons. I'm a single mom, Laura. I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old. So, I take my 16-year-old to school, and but then I head into the office, and then I pick him up at 4:30 from the bus, and we do, we play board games, or I go to his games or whatever. And then I might work another hour, at night, maybe 10 to 11. But if I'm out working my competition, I'm going to win. I'm going to win every time. So, because it's the only thing you can control. There's just so many things you can't control. You can't control the interest rates. You can't control the tax laws, all things that, happen to us in our business and our industry. But if I can listen and watch your podcasts and learn from your podcasts, like I have 2 college students today shadowing me. And I said to them, they both want to get into real estate. One's a senior and one's a junior. And I said, so do you guys listen to podcasts? Do you read the newspapers of the markets that you want to go work in? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, and I said, and when you guys graduate, you're going to be competing against 100 other people that want the same job as you. So this is my advice. If you want to be, a real estate developer, or if you want to be a flipper, there's so many podcasts that they could be adding to their education right now and be that far ahead when they're sitting down in an interview competing with 10 other people.
Right. And, you brought up a couple of good points, and I'd like to ask you some questions on that. First of all, is the time management. Is that we all have 24 hours a day, right? So you have 24 hours, I have 24 hours, Warren Buffett has 24 hours. So the thing is, we all have 24 hours, and what we decide to do in those 24 hours is what is going to change our life, and so that's so important, that the time management, really structuring your time, which brings me to the next question for you, is that you say you listen to podcasts, you get up every morning at 5:30. So would you like to share what is your routine every day? What are things that you have, like, I know they say, you win the morning, you win the day. I'm very much aware of that. So I always set my day up in a certain way to start with. But what type of routine and things do you count on to do that's going to put you on the right path every day to succeed?
Sure. So between 5:30 and 6:15, I usually are checking I love coffee, I walk the dog, and I read 3 newspapers every day. So I read the Wall Street Journal, the Miami Herald, and the Daily Business Review. And then I check my social media, and I usually post on LinkedIn, usually in the morning. And then I make my son breakfast and I take him to the bus stop. And on the way to the bus, he and I, sometimes we talk and sometimes we'll listen to a book on tape. Like right now, his English class, they're reading The Great Gatsby, which is not an easy book to read. So he and I are listening to the audiobook. So that's kind of supplementing his education or learning of the book. And then I drop him off at the bus, and then I head to the office. And every morning between that bus stop and the office is about 20 minutes. And I'm either listening to a book. I do a book club every month where I listen to a book on tape, and we have a monthly book club discussion of how the book relates to our business in real estate leasing and selling and commercial. So I'm usually listening to that book of the month, or I'm listening to podcasts. So this morning, getting ready for my podcast with you, I listened to the podcast that you did with Rita, the woman that has the pomegranate meetup that I'm going to tomorrow night. So I got to kill two birds with one stone. And then I get to the office, and it's rock and roll. I'm showing space. I'm underwriting deals. I'm signing checks. I'm calling someone that didn't pay their rent. So during the day, I have meetings. Like this morning, I met with a woman in Miami who runs an organization called Women with Profit, or Women for Profit, and she's a very a successful residential real estate woman, Bethany. And so I met her to talk to her about the Women Investor Symposium in January. So, and then I travel probably twice a month. So, but then by 4 o'clock, I'm done. I go pick up my son, and then we hang out. We do fun things. He might have a game. He might have tutoring. We go out to eat, or we cook dinner together. We hang out. My other son, if he's not working, we do things together. And then he's in bed by 9:30, 10. And then I either chill out. I might do some social media stuff. I do a lot of my posting I do, waiting. Like if I'm waiting at the doctor or I'm waiting at the bus stop, I try to do some postings, because social media, you can really leverage social media for your brand, which I think is very important. So I try to post 2 to 3 times a day on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook.
Right. No, I agree. As far as marketing, even for real estate, one of the first things I teach is that you have to establish your brand, and the easiest way to do it is social media, and it's free. Go out there and tweak your profiles. Let everybody know that you are in real estate, that you're interested in real estate. Establish those connections through social media. That's the best thing you can do, and it's free. You don't have to build a website or spend time doing that. Just do that so that you're in business, and then eventually you can invest in more marketing or websites, definitely. And so it seems like from what you're saying, you spend a good portion of your morning to really get yourself set up, get you thinking, learn, because this is something I do too. Every morning I devote at least an hour to learning. I do my audiobooks later in the day, because that's when I take my dog for a walk, and so I listen to an audiobook. So my dog sometimes goes for 2-hour walks because I want to listen to the next chapter, but she loves that. But the thing is, definitely there is a routine. There is something that we keep ourselves thinking all the time, working, coming up with new ideas. And that's by really educating ourselves consistently and listen to everybody. And I tell everybody, I'm not too proud. I always listen to what another real estate investor has to say. There's so much I can learn from other people's way of looking at things.
Right.
That's great. Now, what do you wish you would have known when you started? Obviously wisdom comes with experience, but what something you would say, okay, if I knew this, I would have taken a different approach?
Probably math. I was an English literature major in college. When I was in 2nd grade, the nun told my parents, Beth's going to be great in English and history, but math and science aren't going to be her thing. And I let that resonate my whole life. So when I got out into the real world and I started wanting to underwrite deals, I was intimidated by the lack of knowledge of math. So I improved my skills in that, but I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have paid attention to that in high school and college, and I wrote it off. I wrote it off because a teacher said, she'll be good at this. And, how much influence parents and teachers and leaders have in young ears, I think is very underestimated. So, and I have I have young girls that intern with me and young men, and across the board, the women that intern with me or that work with me across the board are the ones who raise their hand and say, I don't know math. And I go, take a class. You need to know math. And in our business, you really need to only know 4 or 5 formulas, but it's the limiting mindset belief that they don't know. It's, when I talk to people, I go, why don't you invest? Why don't you, do a fix and flip, or why aren't you investing? And they go, it's too complicated. I don't know math. I don't know the numbers. And I just want to, strangle them and go, well, then learn it.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, definitely. I think in real estate is interesting because, having the mind quick with numbers, I can spot a deal and quickly I know in my head if that's even something that's worth pursuing based on some quick figures. So you don't have to know a lot, but you have to be, fast enough to recognize a list, especially when you do through a numbers game, like with a residential, where you have to go through a lot of potential leads to find the diamond in the rough. Now, let me ask you, based on your experience, and you deal with you have the symposium coming up, which I'll be asking to you in a second to talk more about different events that you do, and you work around a lot of women. And so what are 3 tips that you would say for a woman that wants to start in commercial real estate, but with any real estate, as an investor, not as an agent, but more as an investor? What are 3 things that you would like your recommendations?
I think that, and we touched on this a little bit before, so focus, right? So pick something that you have a passion with. So one of my friends just bought her first shopping center. Well, she was a leasing agent for 10 years. So for retail. So that was something she could kind of transition into and understood it. And then her intelligence, because of her experience, helped her buy this shopping center, versus another one of my friends owns 28 townhomes in Wichita, Kansas. She started buying in her subdivision, so focused on the geography. So I think you either focus on the asset class for some connection that you feel connected to, whether it's because of maybe you were a realtor and you started selling condos, so you're comfortable buying condos in this market that you sold as a realtor, 50 of them over your career. So I think that you take your experience and your education in that asset class, and then narrow down that niche, and then focus again, narrowing down on a geography if possible, because the more you know about the market, the quicker you are to make the decision. So in many of the situations with the shopping centers I've purchased, I had competition, but the competition didn't understand the market. So I was able to offer a little more that they thought I was crazy, but in the end, it was a big win because I knew more about the market, because I was in the market all the time and knew way more than them, because their office was 30 miles away and they didn't have a clue about the market. So I think just picking one product type, and then if you can, pick a geography would be the number 1 and 2. And then overcoming fear, because I do think clearly that's what I'm finding out with women when I travel the country and I go, why aren't you investing? It's based on fear. So I would say educate, educate, educate. Listen to podcasts like Laura with you. It's very inspiring to hear these podcasts with these women and people you have on your podcast. And there's so many podcasts that talk about investing and women investing. So I would tell them, like your podcast with Rita, how inspiring when she said, I decided I wanted to invest, so I read 60 books and listened to 350 podcasts. That blew my mind away that she said that. I mean, that was so inspiring. So I think women can educate themselves in their cars to overcome their fear.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the thing I always say, that, that you don't know something that you don't know. So, getting the knowledge, information, there is so much out there. And the other thing is find somebody that inspires you and follow them, follow in their footsteps. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find somebody, some woman that is an inspiration to you, and then follow her. And that's one of the things when I started, like I said, I was lucky that I was in an environment with women. And a couple of months ago, I did visit one of my original mentors from 40 years ago. She's been in real estate for 40 years, and since the 80s, and she still remembered me. But the thing is, I told her, I said, you were my inspiration. You were the one that I followed, and I decided to stick with this business. So that's how powerful it is that somebody draws you. So that's great. I know you wrote a couple of books, and you mentioned them earlier about commercial real estate, and you also have a symposium coming up. And so you do live events. And so tell us a little bit about it. How can people find out more about you if they want to read your books, your website, and also your contact information? And what are these events about that you host for women?
Sure. So people can find me on bethazor.com. I have over 150 free videos on YouTube on mostly it's commercial real estate leasing, but people can it's pretty much just sales advice, so free videos. I have a podcast on Anchor, which that's where we host the book club conversation. And I don't do interviews. I just talk about, sales tips, and that's all free. The two books, one book is called Don't Say No for the Prospect. And it's basically, I think a lot of times salespeople say no for the prospect. Like, well, I should call that homeowner maybe because I'd like to buy that house. Well, he's not going to sell to me, so I'm not going to call him. So we put we stop ourselves from making the call, and then we read in the newspaper 3 weeks later that someone else bought it and flipped it, and we're like, oh, we should have called. So that's that book. And then the book I just released 2 weeks ago is called The Retail Leasing Playbook. And that's specifically for leasing agents who lease shopping centers. It's a very niche, like an A to Z, how do you fill a shopping center? The symposium is on January 9th, and it is for women. It's called the Commercial Real Estate Investment Symposium for women. And the reason I'm having it is because I'm frustrated by the amount of women that I speak to as I travel around the country going to these conferences. And a friend of mine went to the Bigger Pockets conference in Nashville, and she came back and she said there were 2,000 people there, and there was about 100 women, and half of those women were spouses of the men. And that just frustrated me. So I started looking for where are there, commercial real estate, cash flowing, investing conferences, and I just didn't see many. So I said, I'm going to get 8 of my friends who invest in real estate, who have cash flowing real estate, and we're going to put on a symposium where they get up on stage and I do a fireside chat with them, and I say, how did you buy your 28 townhomes in Wichita? Or how did you buy your first shopping center? And just interview them, because I think that women, like you said, they don't know what they don't know. And I want to show them 8 examples of women that have done it and are doing it. And then at lunchtime, we have a woman speaking about overcoming limiting beliefs, Julia Aquino. And then we're going to have a Shark Tank event where someone's going to present a deal, and we're going to analyze the deal and see if I want to invest in it or someone else does. And then in the afternoon, we're going to get on a bus and we're going to drive to my 4 shopping centers, and I'm going to tell everyone why I bought this center, if I renovated it, how much did it cost, how did I raise the money, the equity, how did I get the loan, and then we're going to go have cocktails at the end of the day.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, you have this one coming up in January, but if somebody listens to this podcast later on and it's, you post on your websites when the events are? Can they find out more there? Okay.
Yes.
Can you repeat your website address?
Yes, it's bethazor.com. So BETHAZOR.com. Okay,
great. Yeah, so definitely check it out. And I'm sure there is a way for them to get on your email list as well, right, on your website?
Yes.
So they get notices from you. Great. Well, thanks again for taking the time to share information, especially in an area that is even more niche than what I'm doing. I'm doing residential for women, but you're commercial, especially commercial leasing, and to show that, anything you want to do in real estate is possible. That's the bottom line. Decide what really thrills you, right? What interests you, what makes you get up in the morning, and it's like, okay, I love this, and get the best to do this. Get, the best you can at doing this. You don't have to do 10 types of real estate. You don't have to do 10 different markets. but get the best at what you do in the market that you are, and then you can go from there. It will keep you more busier than you can ever imagine. So great, thanks again for taking the time today. And we are neighbors because we're both, actually, you realize we have the offices in the same location here in South Florida. So I'm sure we'll be connecting, and we both are very animated about bringing women into the real estate investing world and show them that, yes, you can do it, you can be successful. And you actually, like one of the things you said, follow your gut feeling. This is something that we have that's so powerful. And if we just believe it, we feel, trust and believe ourselves, there's nothing stopping us.
100%. Laura, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just so happy that you have this podcast to encourage women investors. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And yes, everybody, please follow Beth. I think she's going to keep bringing great things to everybody. And happy holidays. Thank you.
Happy holidays.